Hello, I'm currently super sick, so I'm not going to be working on my project today. I've basically just been in bed the last few days. I woke up really sick at 4 in the morning, and I've just not had the mental capacity to do anything at all. But I wanted to make one quick intro to this next video. That's all I'm going to say today because I learned something really upsetting today, and in hindsight, I'm not particularly surprised by it. This is pretty much a trend in pretty much all these mega rich men who own corporations and everything. But it is going to change how I move through the rest of my project. It's really unfortunate because I want to be cohesive, and this product has been useful for me to do something that I needed to do. But let's go into it. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So I have been working on this project, which is a computational model of dissociative amnesia. When I started this project, I didn't like I'm a survivor. Okay, I'm a survivor of rape myself, and I needed nobody was getting the science done for me. In my experience, it was highly stigmatized. I suffered from dissociative amnesia because I went through a period of an emotionally abusive situation with someone in my life. We weren't dating, it was like a friend. And I developed dissociative amnesia. Okay, I struggled with sexual violence, sexual trauma. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm making this model. And I didn't have back then I was working multiple nanny jobs. I was just trying to figure out how on earth I was going to do this. I was struggling so badly mentally. It was like genuinely impacting my like there were so many ways I was being impacted by not nobody understanding how dissociative amnesia worked. And I didn't have I tried myself to get into an actual real program. Like I tried to get into a neuroscience program or a more trauma specific program, but unfortunately the way that the degrees here work, like I wasn't able to get into one of those because I had a comparative literature and societies background. I didn't have a psychology background. I ended up going like I did a psychology master's because that was what I was able to get into based on what I had. It was a conversion psychology program, so for people who had didn't study psychology in undergrad, but I had a lot of lived experience as a survivor of rape, and I wanted to do the science because there's a lot of stigma. People were calling people with dissociative disorders fantasy prone. It was a lot of male scientists specifically doing science calling survivors fantasy prone and socially suggestible. And I was like in shock that that would even be considered a legitimate scientific theory, but it was. And so because of that, I went into this project. This was like a year ago that I started this project. I had a negative opinion of ChatGPT already. I didn't really I wasn't like doing a bunch of stuff on it. I had I wasn't a big AI person, but I just thought like this is something so necessary that I'm going to use it the way that I need to, not to do my work for me. I've read like countless articles, all this stuff, but I was like, I can't live my life completely like not understanding myself, and I need science, and I have the experience to do the science for people. So I was like, okay, in this situation, I know it's not a perfect thing, but it's like the outcome would be good if I could get science. I'm going to use ChatGPT to help me learn certain things and unpack certain papers because I wasn't a neuroscientist, and I learned a lot. I don't like using AI particularly. I'm not a big fan of it. I just use it because that's the tools that I've had, not having being able to actually get into a program that I needed to get into, if that makes sense. And I just that's what I had available. So I used it for what to me was like for the greater good, right? Right now there's so much going on for survivors. I was like, we need the science like drastically because the lack of it impacts how people move through the justice system because people recover memories. And then the science is really stigmatizing to people who recover memories, is really stigmatizing to people who recover memories. So then they can't get the support they need. They can't navigate the justice system well because nobody understands their experience, and then they're called fake or gaslit, all this stuff. So I was like, I feel it's important. But I didn't I all of these AI companies are run by these, if it was run in an ideal world, because I actually believe in AI, I think there's so much that it can do. I don't think that we are using it well. I don't think that the kind of things that it can do, I don't think the average person should have access to. I don't think we should be able to talk to it like it's a friend or should be able to embody anybody. I don't think people should do therapy on it. But it's been a good tool for me to like unpack, like, okay, can you explain this a bit simply and everything, right? So I believe in AI. The problem is that corporate greed just any industry, like it could be the most morally clean thing in the world, and AI isn't perfect or morally clean, but you could put the most morally clean thing into the hands of a greedy, wealthy man, and they will turn it into the most horrendous and just badly run, unethical thing in the world. You can take food industry, I don't care, they'll turn it into the most unethical thing. It's awful. And it's just such an awful reflection of greed. There's so many ways that I wish that the things that we had were run by, for example, if it was some kind of open source thing, not run by some mega corporation or something like that, run by scientists who had the best interests of the world in mind, and they were running it very ethically and everything, things would be a lot better. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. It's run by people who want to profit. And what I learned today is that Sam Altman's sister is accusing him of sexual abuse when they were younger. So he apparently, um, she came forward about the fact that she was being sexually abused and raped at various times between 1997 and 2006 in Missouri. Okay, and I believe her. Okay, I've personally known people that have had sexual abuse that has been incestuous. Okay, it's a very heavy topic, but I know people have dealt with that. I believe her. I know people. Of course, the natural backlash is to turn around and run a defamation trial. Okay, because he's a very wealthy man. Okay, and whether we know these people do what they do or not, they all will always get away with it. We can see that in the government right now with Donald Trump, with everybody. We know that's how it works. So I'm not going to look at a wealthy man turning around and running a defamation trial as some kind of proof that it's not true. I do believe her, to be honest with you, and I'm not going to continue to use ChatGPT. That being said, I'm probably until the end. I'm almost done with this project. After I'm done with this project, it's basically hopefully going to be a good entrance for me to get into like an actual computational neuroscience program, and then I can just know how to do everything myself anyways, and I don't have to use the support of ChatGPT. I've used it less and less as I've gotten through my project because I built my own expertise. I haven't had as many questions. um everything that I learned for this project I learned myself because I wanted survivors to have more, and I wanted them to have I wanted them to have science. I wanted them to have medical care, like medicine. I wanted them to have, better luck in the justice system and everything. That's why I did what I did. So it's 100% not what I want to be using the product of somebody who committed sexual abuse, even as a child. Um Even as a child, that's obviously disgusting, and I'm just not. I'm not in support, obviously, of that at all, and I didn't know this until now. It would just recently, I think it just recently came out. Anyways, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have used it, because this project, even though, it's like sometimes it's like, people say there's no ethical consumption under capitalism because all these different things are run by these people. It's like sometimes it's like I had to use the tools that I had to do something that will hopefully be disruptive to the patriarchy as well, and that can help support the people like Sam Altman's sister, and can help them in the justice system, help them recover, help them have treatment. And I'm very sorry that that happened, and that's disgusting. That should never happen ever in a million years. um and yeah, I'm not for that at all. So I'm not going to be using ChatGPT for the rest of my project. It's frustrating because I've been doing it this whole time on there. So I just, it's tough because it's like all my information is there, but I'm not going to use it. I'm going to be dead honest. And I know you can see the US judge dismissed it. I also went through a Title IX trial when I was at university, and yeah, they also let him be totally fine. So I don't trust the court system, and I don't trust judges. I trust survivors, and I trust what they say, unless there's some extreme situation. And I know that not every case is true, but I do believe this one. I have no reason to not believe it because that's pretty much been the trend amongst these kinds of people very often in our world. So I do believe her. I don't care what a court says because I've been through justice system setting. Anytime, you can tell me survivor cases get thrown out all the time. Brett Kavanaugh, um, the investigation they did against him didn't go right. And also, a lot of the issues that were happening in that case would have been aided by trauma informed people that actually understood how survivors work and how their brains work and everything. I don't like, I'm not one of those people that's going to look at what the justice system is saying and be like, oh look, a woman lied, because I've been through it myself, and I can tell you that courts will side with wealthy white rich men a lot of time. My assaulter was not a white man. He was not wealthy or anything, but he was a man though. And I will say that men, a lot of the times, it's not even just because they're men, but also because these institutions don't want to throw punishments that will cause some kind of backlash for them. They don't want the numbers up for them. They don't want to seem like they have sexual assault in their office or on campus or whatever. There's a lot of complex reasons why it's very hard for survivors of a sexual violence to actually get any kind of success in the justice system. And I just want people to know that I'm not going to ever look at a judge dismissing something against somebody and say like, oh, that's because they're wrong. And that's why I'm doing this project anyways, is because there's so much more that goes into survivorhood than just like, it's so much more also than just having physical evidence. A lot of things happen behind closed doors, and people don't have that kind of material to hand over. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And the justice system's also very broken. So I just wanted to say that. And it's triggering, it's disappointing. I'm really disappointed in this, and just everything that I'm reading, it's awful. And I do believe her, and I'm not going to use ChatGPT anymore. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to switch to, again, like what I mean is I'm going to switch to another AI platform for now, just because I really do need this to get through to the end, because I don't actually have a degree. I'm just doing my best with the lived experience that I have to do something that I hope will help people right now. So it's not like the best perfect means, but it's what I have right now. And doesn't mean that whoever this Google Gemini, I'm sure we could look up the Google CEO, and I'm sure there's probably another thing for me to uncover that's like, oh my god, happens to me all the time. I'll start using somebody's product, or I'll start being like, oh, amazing, and I look them up and it's like, so they did all this awful stuff, and I'm like, oh my freaking god, it's just not possible. It's awful how rampant sexual abuse and sexual violence is. But I'm just not going to use this product anymore because I do believe his sister. So unfortunately, that's going to be the end of my run with ChatGPT until the end of this project. Thank you, ChatGPT, for what it offered me, and I hope that like it's poetic justice in a way for me to have used it to support other survivors. I hope people can take that from this. Like I hope that this will be something to even hopefully emotionally support Sam Altman's sister in some way, shape, or form, and that she gets the care and the support that she needs. Like, no. So yeah, it's like, it's really hard. It's just really hard to do like a really morally clean and ethical thing in the world that we live in, because, you go to a university, the university's got issues. It's also it's always the sexual violence. It's like you go to a university, the university's got issues. You turn around, you use a program to try to get help for survivors. All of a sudden, the CEOs are freaking, oh my gosh. It's like, it's just not, it's so hard. And it's like, I'm just going to keep using the tools that I have, but the tool isn't going to be ChatGPT anymore, unfortunately. So I do believe her. I'm sorry, Anna Altman, that happened to you. And I just hope that you get the healing that you deserve. Good morning. I've just started feeling better today. Finally, after days of feeling very unwell. And I'm ready to make the next step in my little Hotfield network. And I decided to just go ahead and use Claude's own AI thing, because I've been liking Claude and I'm using it for my anthropomorphic key. I don't remember what it's called. I have the little key in my little thingy thing. So yeah, I've just been liking using it. I thought I would just go ahead. So I was about to write what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to use the normal Claude. So I'm going to go into that. So I'm not going to use ChatGPT anymore, like I said. I'm going to go in and get the things that like sum up, not through any messages, but just get the things that I was using last time. because it had corrected me on one little phrase that I was using. It said I wasn't actually doing pattern separation, I was doing attractor stability. I want to think about that a bit, but it doesn't matter. Anyways, I was gonna ask my API key thing, but I'm pretty sure that, first of all, it costs money, so might as well save it. And then I heard that this thing was better for like problem solving, essentially. I might do this. I'm just getting to the point where it's like it feels very serious. So I just yeah, so I am gonna get pro. You can't use Opus that much. Opus is like the really advanced model, but it's just like, you know, like I said, this is something that I'm like it could genuinely be really important for the gap I'm trying to fill, you know? So I'm like, it's worth the cost. It's also something that I've been working on personally for over a year, you know. It's like important to me, so it doesn't it's it's like a worthwhile investment. All right, so here we go. I think I'm gonna start with Sonnet and then I'm gonna get up to Opus like in a second. I don't know actually. What I want to ask, so I already made all this idea was made by me with my reading, with my everything, okay? So I drafted this idea. Again, I'm just going back to get my things that I was finishing up here, but I just want to say I want to speak to the testament, like speak to the power of actually engaging with humans though, because I was having such a rough time last summer. Like, how do I build this thing? I didn't really know how. And I was like, God, I just want to speak to a human being so bad. And I didn't have access to one. And I finally got a supervisor. And in a second, my supervisor was like, just build a hot field network. In all that time, none of the AI that I was messing with ever said, like, hey, you could just make a hot field network and all this stuff. Like, it didn't do that. So goes to show that humans are they're more efficient at coming up with like just better solutions, like better packaged in a lot of different areas. Here's one thing is that, again, just to go back and see what everything else being done. So high ACH should not inhibit dentate gyro neurons. Um, or it's saying it doesn't do that. I swear for a fact, I'm gonna go back to my text. I swear, because I remember being like, what? This is so bizarre that I read that it does this. Okay, and this is one of those things where it's like sometimes you gotta go to your own stuff. Let's see, was it here that I read it? You see, look, acetylcholine inhibits dentate gyro neurons, I said. So which may promote pattern separation by increasing sparse coding. So that's what I said. Anyways, because I remember reading that the dentate gyros, like they're not inherently sparsely coded. They're like actually, what's the word? Like dense by nature, and then they have to be inhibited. And I was like, what? So it's like people say that the point of the dentate gyros is to sparsely code things, separate patterns, but I'm like, if you don't do anything to it, like you have to inhibit it to do that. I was like, what? It kind of does the opposite, but let me see if I can come up with like a brainstorm first so then I don't have to rely so much. What I want to do basically is I said in the last video, so this was my idea that I came up with after reading my text again and everything. I was like, what if there's another pattern here at the top, like a second pattern, and basically if the acetylcholine was high, it would like sift it to that pattern, but if it was lower, it would basically start blending the patterns on accident. And this was something that I read. Basically, I had a problem with my own network, which was creating a superposition of stored patterns. And I thought, like, what if it did that? And would that be a good representation? Okay, so I just wrote my whole idea. So I want to look at how acetylcholine generates sparser patterns that are more distinct. I already have one random pattern being generated. I want a second memory at the top, almost like a dummy pattern that is a stand-in for an old memory. I also want to have an acetylcholine function that goes up and down around my patterns from 0 to 1. This is an example from another code. In this line, I can put it in a percentage and it will modulate the effect to that degree. Basically, what will happen is that the higher the acetylcholine, the more geared their learning will be towards the real pattern. This is an example of the first pattern being generated by my code. But the lower acetylcholine goes, the more likely the code is to be mixed with the dummy pattern, similar to how spurious attractors function, how a spurious attractor functions. This is modeling how higher acetylcholine promotes distinct, sparsely coded memories, while the lower it goes, the more interference there is from past memories. So by the time the code gets to the weights function, I think, or I don't know, maybe it should be in the weights. I don't think it should be in the weights part. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. It should be either learning a mixed, I think it should be before because I think this would be happening with the dentate gyrus. So it's like already learning a pattern from there. Anyways, by the time the code gets the weights function, it should be either learning a mixed memory or a distinctly encoded memory, depending on how high or low the acetylcholine is. This could be enacted by the ones in my pattern being more or less likely to activate each other. If I think about this, yeah, I'm gonna see what it says and then I'm gonna think some more. So this could be enacted by the ones in my pattern being more or less likely to activate each other, as acetylcholine desynchronizes neurons and suppresses lateral connections. How would you suggest I implement this in my code? Because I don't know how to write the code for that. And then the other thing there was something else that I wanted to say. I don't remember. I had like one more rule or something that I wanted to mention. I don't remember. We're gonna go straight to Opus from the beginning, and then we can work with Sonnet after, just so I get the best response I can. Okay, so the core idea is that acetylcholine controls how much the new pattern stands on its own versus getting contaminated by the old dummy pattern. Neurobiologically, high acetylcholine suppresses recurrent and lateral connections and promotes feed-forward input, so the new encoding is driven by the actual stimulus rather than by old attractor states bleeding in. Here's how I'd implement it. Create the dummy pattern at the top alongside your existing random pattern. So build an apply acetylcholine function that makes your real pattern the dummy pattern and an acetylcholine level, then takes your real pattern, the dummy pattern, and an acetylcholine level, then returns the pattern that actually gets stored. At a high acetylcholine, you get back something very close to the real pattern. This is what I was saying. So at low acetylcholine, neurons from the dummy pattern leak in. Some of the real patterns, active neurons get replaced by the dummies, producing a mixed/spurious encoding. Apply this before the weight learning step, so by the time you get it, the pattern is either being learned, is either clean or contaminated. So here's a concrete implementation. Then replace the raw pattern with ACH modulated versions before computing weights. Let's just try the dummy pattern situation and see like what's printing with that. Okay, so here's the old memory. So it is printing an old memory. So, and then this is just me thinking out loud. Got like my supervisor's voice in my head right now. I could basically make a function. This is for my results section. It is going to be a function that's going to show like how different the real pattern and like the pattern that made it are from each other. That's going to have to be a thing. So I can see like how different, like how I could probably make it even more specific, but like a thing that shows like how different and similar. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Anyways, so that's working. So then what's going to happen is that apply acetylcholine. That's really interesting. So it's looking at a probability. For each disagreement, the probability 1 to acetylcholine, with probability 1 minus ACH, the dummy wins. I think that's a smart solution. Then replace the raw pattern with acetylcholine modulated version before computing weights. So depending on this acetylcholine, like I said, apply acetylcholine to each pattern. The dummy acts as interfering old memory. So encoded patterns equals NP array. Apply acetylcholine in patterns. Now compute weights from the encoded patterns. What this gives you, acetylcholine, at acetylcholine 1, the encoded patterns are identical to your real patterns. as acetylcholine dropped towards 0, the neurons get swapped with the dummy pattern's values. So the stored memories become blended, exactly the interference spurious attractor effect you described. The weight matrix then reflects these contaminated patterns, so recall will be degraded in a biologically plausible way. Does that make sense, or does that create a new memory, if that makes sense? I think that is how it works, right? I mean, just thinking about it. I'm not going to ask it. I'm going to have confidence because I read this. Like, this is from what I read. So I have confidence in my idea. And then let's try all of this then. I keep being like, okay, this isn't like, it's just modulating what's happening. But then I'm like, well, it is a neuromodulator. So I guess that kind of is accurate. Like, it's not, I'm not like implementing like, okay, I'm actually gonna like, I don't know how to put it exactly. Like, I'm actually gonna put like a second thing in there or something. Like, I'm just like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like my thing is like, it's like on top versus inside, but if it's working, then it's working, you know? This is definitely not gonna work immediately. I feel like I'm probably gonna have to do some troubleshooting. Okay, let's try this. And we're gonna put the acetylcholine. Let's put it at just 1, which is gonna do nothing, and just see like, okay, everything's looking fine. Like, just to troubleshoot a bit first, and then I'll go into seeing if it works. So it printed the memory, printed all these memories. I need a line where it's gonna print the dummy pattern too, I think. Let's see if I can code it myself. I'm just gonna copy it. Okay, in my coding era, I don't know if this is gonna work. I just copied what was already happening, and I hope that works because I didn't feel like asking Claude code anything or whatever. So I just hope that works. Let's see. Let's try that again. Okay, yeah. Except that it has this randomness. Okay, already has issues because it's just printing the same thing over and over again. And I needed to have the same. See, now it's gonna be like a whole bunch of troubleshooting. It's gonna be a whole bunch of troubleshooting. So I'm really lazy to do that. We got something in there. Is it gonna work yet? I don't know. We're having one issue, which is basically that the dummy pattern is just, it doesn't have like a unique thing at each point. It's just the same thing over and over again. But in theory, it is coming up as like, all right, our first troubleshooting thing is that it's just printing the same pattern over and over, like I said. So I'm gonna see if I can fix that. Okay, we're gonna try that again. So now it is making a matrix of dummy patterns. Okay, so now it's getting a unique thing for each line. And you can see that the stored pattern, like I did check last time, they're obviously very unique from each other, very distinct. So let's try putting the ACH lower. Try putting it at like 0.5. Or actually 0. Try 0. Like let's try 0 actually and see if we're getting the dummy pattern. Okay. So now it doesn't seem like that really did anything at all, to be honest with you. It doesn't really seem like that did anything. It doesn't seem like they mixed that much. Well, let's see what it was supposed to be, and that will tell us. So, what was that pattern supposed to be in the first place? Actually, it does look really different. It doesn't look how I thought it was going to look, though. Oh, wait. No, that's a little hard to say. This one's gonna be like, I think a bit of a challenge to troubleshoot, just because I'm a little bit ill-equipped, I think, to understand like what's going down here and all the other multitude of problems that it could be instead of my thing actually working. Okay, this was the dummy pattern. We're gonna put it at the end. So this is the dummy pattern. This was like the original stored pattern, and this was my result. 01100111000000000. I'm so confused. I'm really confused right now. 1001010. It doesn't look like, it's like it doesn't look like anything at all, as like it doesn't look how I expected, and it also doesn't look like either of the patterns, because when you look up here at the front, it does almost look like they got in a bit of a mixed state. Actually, it does kind of look like it got into a mixed state, but it doesn't look like, no, but see, it's confusing because sometimes the original pattern does have a 1, but then the result doesn't have a 1 at all. And I thought it would be a lot more blown up with 1s than it is, so I'm just a little bit confused. Thought it would have a lot more 1s in this. Let's ask let's consult and see what it thinks of its own thing because I'm a little bit confused. I thought it would be like, lots of 1s and it looks very, very similar to the other one, and I think I might be right, so that just confuses things because I don't know, like, does that mean something's not working? What's not working? And I'm gonna troubleshoot in a second, but yeah, I think this is a challenging one for me, I think. Okay, what will this think? Yeah, it's just randomly swapping things. You know what? I'm not trusting this anymore. I'm gonna start trusting, like, I'm gonna lean back on my own logic and let it sink in, and I'm gonna be more exact with what I want. And I'm gonna look at, like, I'm gonna read even more and just get more exact, just across the board because I'm not, that's the problem is that it will make moves that you don't want. And what I said should be happening is that the ones should be like didn't I say the ones in my pattern being more or less likely to activate each other. I think I need to get more specific with it about what I mean by that. I think I'm too tired for this. So I'm gonna like take a shower, go out for a little coffee or something. I think my logic is like sound, but I just don't think it's enacting it correctly. I don't even know if it should be merging neurons. I guess. I don't know. This is what I want. So the dummy's pattern bleeds into the real pattern rather than substituting for them. Let's go back, but I'm gonna read. I think that's probably right, but I'm gonna read more. I'm gonna reread. I said in like my last video, I was like, this paper, I need to read it like 7 times. And I already have read it a few times. I'm gonna read it again because this is my basic. This is like this is like my Bible for this part of the project right now because they said everything I need. So I'm gonna read this again and everything. I think later in the day so that I can be like, okay, this is exactly what's right and exactly what was said and everything. Get me? So yeah, because I think something is just not really right. But it's a start. We have our dummy pattern, so it's a good start. So I'm back to work on it a little bit more. So reworked it basically so that it would be mixing them instead of just like randomly choosing one. So now we're gonna try it at 0 again. It kind of drives me insane how only the recovered memory comes out with like a 1.0 instead of just whatever. But okay, this is the thing that in theory should be getting messed up is this closest stored pattern. Let's find the dummy oh yeah, old memory already. Let's find the normal memory. Okay, so that did nothing. Again. I think it might have done something with the recovered pattern, but it needs to be the stored pattern. You see, because it didn't pick up anything. Let's see how it came out in the recovered pattern though, just to see if it's like, oh, it's happening in the recovered pattern but not the rest. I think that might be happening. I can see there's a lot of 1s in the recovered pattern. So it does kind of look like the feature is working. It's just only coming out in the recovered pattern. Because I can see there's a lot of 1s here. Are they all the ones from the old one? Let's check. It's a little bit confusing because it's hard to get these lined up. Like there's a 1 here. The old memory one has a 1 at the end, but not here. I think I just need to think more, but I don't know if you can tell from these videos. I've been kind of over it. I'm so tired. This process has been so exciting and fun and everything, but it's draining because I have real life. Like I have like a job and stuff. If I could just do this all day, I'd be thinking up a storm, but I was thinking that I might go at it the opposite angle. Right now it's blending them. I mean, that's what it's supposed to do, but this is a thing, is that I'm thinking of making a more like just a more in-depth function because the thing I was reading, where is it? This is a text I said I need to read like 1,000 times because it's really good. I was mentioning, because ChatGPT got this wrong, how acetylcholine inhibits the dentate gyrus. I don't remember. Oh, I ended up finding it like by accident. It's weird that of all of the ones in the paper, like this one has a random little like description. A little bit outside my comfort zone, but I'm gonna try this paper out. What I want, because this is how it would be in theory, I think. Well, let's learn more about the dentate gyrus. You know, right now it's what it's doing is that it's taking like it's saying that whatever the acetylcholine is, like that's the chance that it could be one or whatever. What I thought would be better, like I've been thinking, is if I started with like a dummy pattern, whatever that had a bunch of ones in it, like this or whatever, and then the higher acetylcholine was up, the more it kind of turned like turned off the ones. I need to see if that's actually accurate, but that might actually be more accurate anyways. And I think it'd be easier to implement because obviously it's struggling. You see, so acetylcholine release during encoding is thought to suppress information transfer within the canonical trisynaptic intrahippocampal circuit, thus impeding the propagation of retrieved information to CA1 through recurrent collateral mediated pattern completion. It spares entorhinal inputs to CA3 to CA1, which mediates feed-forward sensory information. I think this part's actually going to be a little bit like, it's just going to have to be a bit more complex than just like, I was thinking how sometimes I feel like the solution is more on top than inside. I don't know, maybe this needs to be more of like an, I don't know actually. We'll see. So I'm reading this and it's like it's a lot of new vocab, so I'm not getting 100%. And then I think I'm going to try to understand it. And I do think that maybe it's more about modeling more directly what's going on with dentate gyrus. I think that's what it's called. Dentate gyrus. Actually, this paper is just just generally good. So I'm going to save it so I can actually, like, it's getting included in my paper. Okay, so here, after some reading, so taken together the present results, this suggests that acetylcholine release inhibits both the recurrent CA3 network, which I already have kind of included in my model, but also the inputs to this recurrent network from the dentate gyrus, suggesting I forget, suggesting cholinergic inhibition of the canonical hippocampal circuit at two sequential situations. So it inhibits the dentate gyrus. So what I should have it do is inhibit, I think. So instead, what it's doing right now is that, so each active neuron in the dummy pattern has a probability of this amount of also activating in the encoded pattern on top of the real pattern. This model fails to suppress the old memory's lateral excitation. There's just so much going on. There's so much going on. We're gonna actually start a document. I think it's not as deep as I'm making it, and I think I'm overcomplicating it as I tend to do all the time. But I'm just getting a little bit lost. Okay, what I think it should now, based on what I've learned, what I think it should do is we have our dummy pattern and we have our normal pattern. And we're gonna have like a dentate gyrus, whatever that has like a mix of the two. Let's see if we can combine these two. Like, let's find the patterns. So we don't need Opus for this. I don't want to waste. So here's a combination of all of them. I'm gonna make something that's gonna do this in the code anyways, but I just wanted to see it myself. So I can play, like, I can brainstorm. So now they have a lot of ones. So this includes like all the patterns. And so what I want to happen, is this accurate? I don't even know. I need to like, this is gonna take more brainstorming as well. But I think like what will basically happen instead is that as acetylcholine goes up, it starts like turning off ones that are in the old pattern, the dummy pattern, but not the new pattern. So if acetylcholine is at 1, all that should be left, actually probably earlier than 1. Like if it's up, all that should be left is the stored pattern. If it's at 0, it should look like this. I need to confirm that that's actually accurate. Okay. So I just spent some time, like I went back to the paper and I asked questions how, like, because this is a lot of new vocab about like certain types of interneurons and stuff. So it was explaining how acetylcholine activates this thing, and then these things activate these other things, and then these things inhibit granule cells. And then I asked, if it inhibits the granule cells, this makes the pattern sparser and more geared towards the current experience, right? I said yes. So we kind of got the whole trisynaptic circuit going on here in theory, kind of, because this is kind of like what is coming from the entorhinal cortex, is this jumbled up mess of patterns. I think that's accurate. And then we have my little like thing, my little feature is gonna be like the dentate gyrus. So it's basically gonna be making the patterns sparser. And then I don't think this is 100% accurate, but it's like more on its way. Reduces interference from previously stored patterns, make the active. So I think that's kind of how it's gonna go in my thing. And yeah, so it's gonna start with something like this, and then as the acetylcholine is going up, it's gonna be like chopping them down. Okay, so we have the whole trisynaptic circuit going on here. So what I already have essentially is this dummy pattern and the stored pattern. Okay, so what we're gonna need, let's delete all this mess, is this next one. The next feature I have, the next what's the word, function. The next function I have is going to be combining them into one pattern. And then instead of it working like this, like I'm gonna fix this modulation thing. And instead of it activating it, like doing this whole probability mess, what's gonna happen is that it's going to start inhibiting the neurons related to the dummy pattern more and more. And then because I'm having this thing where it's like it's putting it in the last one. So the last thing that's gonna happen is that it needs to do like a copy. Like I've seen it do this in other parts. I'm gonna try to see if I find the phrase I'm looking for. It's gonna make a copy. It's gonna make a copy of the like whatever's coming out of this, and that will be learned. Okay, that kind of took everything out of me. I think we can make that really easily now. So I'm gonna use actually my key thing now instead of Claude, like normal Claude. This laptop is starting to drive me insane. It's so glitchy. It's so glitchy. It's just it's a 2015 like refurbished MacBook. It's not a fancy laptop. I had to buy it as an emergency when my other one died, and it just, it's so frozen and like irritating. Wait, so here's a combination 0, 1. So I mean, it looks pretty solid. I'm not checking every single last thing, but it looks like it's kept everything from everything. Just gonna like reorganize really quick. So we have all 3 patterns now. stored pattern, the dummy pattern, and the combined pattern. I'm gonna add like a separator. I might even put this next section in its own cell, but I'll do that in a bit. Actually, I might because it's just getting so big. So now this is what we have right now. And what I wanted to do instead is inhibit the neurons related to the dummy pattern more and more. You know what I was thinking about recently? And I think that it's amplifying my irritation looking at this. I don't know if it's an ADHD thing or my brain thing. My brain works really fast, and I feel like I'm really, because I'm just picking up the information really quick, I'm not that good at filtering. Like I make a lot of typos. I don't know what happens. I'll read something 4 or 5 times and it's like I just don't see the typo. And then like on the sixth time, I'm like, what? Why was this typo here? I just don't like my brain doesn't filter the typos that well. And so when I look at this, it's like in theory it looks easy, but it's like I'm not that good at filtering like I'm very good at like I can read pretty quick, but I'm like I'm really really bad at filtering like that. Like all these little like random little symbols and stuff, it's like a lot. I don't know. Okay, so we're gonna try to implement all this. I think it's the same feature in an ADHD brain where I'm like, you know where you want to like fill in the you already know how somebody's going to end the sentence, and so you've already filled it in, and it's just like you have to train yourself to not interrupt them to fill in the rest of the sentence. I think my brain does that when I'm like reading and writing. Like it knows the big picture of what I'm trying to say, but it's not that good at like it fills in the typo for me where I just overlook the typo because I'm like, okay, I know what I'm trying to say, but it's like I don't see the typo that well. Unless that's just a me thing, but I do kind of think it is an ADHD thing. Okay, so in theory, this pattern right here, because the ACH is at 1, should be exactly the same as the stored pattern. We're going to try 1 and 0 again. Okay, so it is exactly the same as the stored pattern. Now let's try it at 0 and see if it's exactly the same as the mixed pattern. So it says, so here, let's see, 19 out of 50 is active. Is that the same as here? It is. 21 out of 50 and 17 out of 50. And then how many was it before again? Let's try again. At 1, it was 15 out of 50, 13 out of 50, and 9 out of 50. Let's try it at 0.5. 18 out of 50, 18 out of 50, and 14 out of 50. So it is mixed now. So that worked. Let's try it like 0.7, 17, 16, and 11. And this is what? 19, 21, and 17. I mean, this is, yeah, so it's less by like a good amount. So it seems to be working. Is it perfectly biologically realistic to how acetylcholine would work? I don't know, actually. I have no idea, but it should work something like that. Let's try like, so that's if the ACH is really high, like it's still pretty suppressed. If it's at like 0.3, I think that's pretty accurate. Because you're not like, the thing I was reading, like the reason that it works this way is because when it's getting stuff from the entorhinal cortex, the entorhinal cortex makes like a very, very like representative version. Like it's working with like a big picture situation. And then the dentate gears kind of like narrow it down. So it's kind of like if you're not that locked in on like people, you're not like, this is my friend Steve. You're like, this is just a person blob walking by. And it's like, it could be your best friend Steve, but you're just not focused on the fact that it is your best friend Steve. You know, you're like, this is just a jumble of people walking by me that I don't care about. They're just abstractions. And then once you actually focus, then you can be like, oh, okay, this is like, there's like these people, these are like students, like UCL students, or these are like, I don't know, it's like a swarm of zombies coming to get me or something. You know, it's like you're more locked in on like what's happening in the context versus like these are just random abstractions swirling by me that don't need to be picked apart. So I think this actually worked out kind of fine. And then I want to make it so that so this worked. We did this, check. What I also want to make sure that's being okay, so it is dealing with the encoded patterns. What's confusing is that like let's put it all the way through. It's learning this very mixed state. Let's also have it print. I wanted to print this at the end as well. So it learned this mixed state. Now it's gonna learn it. Now we're gonna have a noisy pattern. Now here. I feel like that's gonna impact the recovered pattern. Like now I need to change probably that too, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I don't know. There's like a lot. It's like a waterfall of changes probably to make. What did it learn though? You see how I'm like, it's not, I feel like it's still the output that's coming out. Okay, I need to take a break and figure this out, but I think that the output that's getting learned is still the normal pattern. And it's not the really noisy one. So I need to troubleshoot for that, but at least this part up here is working. Okay, I'm gonna try to lock in on looking normal this time because I was at a crazy angle for most of that. Like I was like, and like crazy stuff. So let's try again. It's hard because I can't actually see my face when I'm sharing my screen. So like I can't see that I've gotten in some really bizarre angle, but it doesn't matter. Uh, I want to end this video on the note, like, because I already have so much recorded, but I want to end it on a note of me actually seeing everything reflected in here. So what I'm gonna do, again, I always have this kind of like, I haven't done this before. So I actually have no idea if like, okay, so was that a good solution? Is that what somebody who actually had a lot of experience, like, is that how they would do it? Is that appropriate? Like I have like these kinds of questions and I don't know if there's actually an answer to that at all, but it kind of makes me nervous. What I was thinking is that I think what's actually gonna create an interesting result is at first I was like, well, maybe I have to change noisy pattern too, but I don't. And the reason is because noisy pattern is the new thing that you're learning or looking at. And so it'll be really interesting to see what memories recover based on whether the state was more mixed or not, because then you can see like, oh, it's like still, like it was still able to remember. I'm just curious how that's gonna go, I guess is like my question. So, um, first I was just asking it, can you make it copy the encoded pattern and can you tell me how to implement that fix across the network so that I actually see that reflected in my output? Um, I want to make sure actually learning the encoded pattern and creating the attractor based on that. I actually have no idea how this one's gonna go. I didn't really like, this is not one that it's not that I don't care about this feature. I do care about this feature. I'm very curious to see like how, what's gonna happen here. I just didn't really like plan for it, if that makes sense. I don't have like a hypothesis. I guess I should hypothesize something so I can say that, right? Well, my hypothesis was essentially that if acetylcholine was higher, you would see that the memories would become more over encoded and that, but they wouldn't be able to recall. That's my primary hypothesis. Um, and that even without acetylcholine being up in the after part, like even if you didn't see acetylcholine up in during the recall phase, higher acetylcholine would still create a better encoded memory. I mean, that's all just really crisp stuff. It's like it's kind of how it works. So it's not really like crazy hypothesis or anything like that, but that's what I hypothesized. I don't know how that's gonna, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's it. I don't know how that's gonna impact with the noisy pattern. It gets a bit tough to read now with like everything coming out. It's like a lot. So we did it with acetylcholine at what? This is acetyl. Let's just try acetylcholine at 1. So we can see just like the cleanest should be completely normal at that point. Acetylcholine should be at 1. It's kind of fun because I have other ideas and things of what I've wanted to study and research, and now I'm seeing how it'll play, like how it'll go. I had one that I would really want to do because I was reading about autistic brains and I was reading about acetylcholine and how it works, and I was seeing a lot of overlap between chronic stress brains and autism brains. Doesn't mean that it's true per se, but I was noticing similarities, and I thought it would be very interesting to run something like this, but with the limitations of an autistic brain and acetylcholine, because my hypothesis would be that because of the how acetylcholine is processed in autistic brains, they would be people with autism would be more likely to develop chronic stress issues, which already anecdotally people can attest to. But I want to link that to acetylcholine because I was seeing like some overlap and I would really like to do that one. And I'm seeing like, okay, I already have the setup a little bit. It would be kind of interesting to do that one. So we're just going to look at one. I need to start implementing that little code piece that's going to do all the mathy stuff for me. So I'm not sitting here like erasing stuff because it's kind of annoying. And I could just really simply get that done. But I just don't feel like thinking about that right now. Okay, it threw like everything up in there. So this is acetylcholine at 1, so it should literally be exactly the same. Original pattern and encoded. Let's see. Yep, exactly the same. And original encoded, exactly the same as the stored pattern. And closest, or it's like everything closest to original, exactly the same. And then noisy input was something else. And then 0000111 0001. It looks like it looks like it came up exactly the same, like recovered. Yeah, it just recovered perfectly fine. So it works normally. How do I, let me try to figure out actually, because it really does annoy me that the numbers come up differently for the recovered. I keep forgetting the word for this. Is it like a float versus an integer? Something like that. I don't remember. Oh, so much better. It's so much easier to see it now. So there's probably a reason why I want this thing here, but I'm just gonna delete it for now, for being dead honest. Because it's just an eyesore and it's annoying. So look, it's so much easier. Okay. Coverage 001, 001, 001. So everything is pretty much the same. It recovered it like spot on, just fine. No mixing, no nothing. Now let's play around. Let's make it 0 point like let's put it all, no. Let's put it at like 0.5. Now this is like my toy. Like once it's done, it's really fun because I can like play with it and stuff and it's really fun. But once when I'm making it, it's like, ugh. Okay, this is like a very small difference. Okay, so very small difference. So let's see what was encoded versus the original pattern. That's 0.7. It's pretty much exactly the same right now. There's like no difference at 0.7. Okay, that's a little strange. That's a little bit strange that it would be not a difference. Unless did I do something wrong? Let's try again. Okay, this one got a little bit extra ones. The top one was pretty much identical, which is kind of good because that shows that there's variation. And then here, this one got a little bit more ones. And then you can see that the recovered, how did the recovered go? It's kind of annoying to look at. Let's do a little copy paste again. Okay, so let's take away the original and take away, no, I think this is good like this. So what was recovered was the mixed one. Okay, makes sense. The mixed one got recovered. So this one seems like it encoded a few extra ones. And what was recovered, it seems like it's recovering the encoded one perfectly fine. It'll be super interesting once I mix this up. I need to fix up my recurrent excitation one needs to be transferred basically to sparse coding now because I have it with the old coding type. because I have it with the old coding type. You can see it's still negative ones and ones. So that's going to be a whole hassle, but I have to do that. And then they're going to get put in the same one. And I'm super interested to see what's going to happen because this is pretty much as expected. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. I'm curious, like, if I put it all the way down at 0, because the noisy pattern is still based on the other thing. So, like, no acetylcholine. So this one has, like, all the ones it can have. And it learned this noisy input. You know what I think, though? I think that the noisy input is actually being made off of the encoded memory. And I don't want it to be. I want it to be normal. See, this is where we're getting, like, because the noisy input shouldn't be crowded. I will say Claude's like chat function is it's very elegant looking and I really like it compared to ChatGPT. Okay, let's see now how the noisy pattern is like. Did it interrupt anything? It did. It did mess stuff up. Let's put it back at 1. We're gonna put the acetylcholine back at 1 where it's not doing really anything at all and try that. Okay, so you can see here it's recovering completely fine. Now, I kind of want to put the noise level. That's fine. It doesn't matter. And then let's go back now and try to put the acetylcholine at 0.7. So it's like a minor difference. What's interesting is that when the acetylcholine, well, I'll go into it in a second. This is what we get. So I'm going to copy paste this here. Okay, so we don't need all this. We just need covered. So this is the encoded. This one only had very, very tiny differences. So you can see that it picked up like one more one, like literally just like one more one than the other. And what it recovered was what it, the noisy input recovered fine. So recovered that. And then let's see if it's like low, like 0.5. Not low, that's like medium. So it's a little bit more like it should have a few more ones here and there. So let's pick up like this last pattern. What did it learn? This is the original and the encoded side by side. So you can see that did it pick up more ones? Yes, it picked up quite a bit more ones. Picked up this one. I'm just doing like a cross out of the ones it picked up to show very obviously what it picked up. It picked up this one and it picked up this one in the encoded. So it picked up like 3 more ones and then what was learned, so it learned that perfectly. Let's go down to 0.3 now. I kind of have like a bit of a hypothesis that the noisy input's gonna have a harder time learning based on the noisy input when you get too low because I don't know. Actually, let's see. Don't know why I think that, but that's like my hypothesis. Let's do this one. This is 0.3. So now the acetylcholine is really getting low and it should be like a much more mixed kind of pattern. We can see that this one picked up four more ones than it was meant to have. So that's a good little difference there. And the noisy input, it learned most of it, except it didn't pick up this one. So it kind of learned a mixed little state that was somewhere between, yeah, it kind of had a little bit of an issue learning it. The thing I was thinking is just that I think the noisy pattern has a lot less ones, but I might be wrong on that. I don't know. For some reason, I thought it was going to have a little bit of issues because of the amount of ones. But I'd have to look at the whole thing. And then if I put it at like just 0, so super mixed state,
You see, now it's really having issues though because they recovered. Doesn't look, it doesn't seem to look anything like either of them. So when the acetylcholine was really low, it's like it's learning a really mixed thing, and then it's the memory of it is not that good. It's like it's like picking up a lot more ones than before. I don't know why exactly that happens. I need to think about that, but I think that's pretty interesting thing to note as well is like the actual recovery is really good until you get to a very low acetylcholine level. That actually, it's funny because um I know that dementia, people have said that it partly is like, I don't know if it happens because, but people with like really, really low acetylcholine levels actually lead to dementia to the degree that when there's people who are studying dementia will give rats scopolamine, which is something that reduces cholinergic, like it reduces acetylcholine to a really low level. And usually that's not a good thing. You don't want low acetylcholine, you want high. So I think it just goes to show as well that when acetylcholine is really low, it's also impacting how the memory could be recovered. I don't know if that's just an issue in my code, but I am seeing that for some reason it starts to pick up like I don't know where it's even getting some of these ones myself. Like where are these ones even coming from? I have zero clue. And that's actually pretty in line because I know if you take scopolamine and acetylcholine is too low, it can actually cause hallucinations. So you can kind of see my network hallucinating a little bit because where are these ones coming from? Either like where did they get them? I don't know. That's pretty interesting. I don't know how on earth that happened. I'm curious to know from like a Hopfield network perspective, but you can kind of see my network hallucinating at too low acetylcholine, which is really interesting. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'll go into that too as well. So yeah, there we go. This is my second experiment run, but not fully run, like ready to run. And you can see some issues and some differences. I'm kind of curious, is it hallucinating in other spots? No, this one it actually is lacking some ones. Maybe it's lacking ones. But you see it's like the behavior gets a lot less predictable as the acetylcholine is going lower because you just start to see these kind of random ones come up and then also random zeros that aren't necessarily adjacent to like look here it has zeros all through the end, but even the noisy pattern has ones, so it's like why are there zeros at the end? So that's actually super interesting that you can kind of see like a dementia-esque energy when you get to the lower levels. Super fascinating. It's how I'm just like I don't even know fully yet how my own network works to be like, how is it even doing that? Like, why? But you can see it, which is really cool. Anyways, I'm gonna have to do research on that, but that pretty much concludes my like second little brain little session of like getting my code ready to run, like to make graphs and stuff. I need to fix my now I need to put recurrent excitation here and get this one to the same like make it very adjacent to this so that I'm getting like it has to have 50 neurons and all that. And then after that I'm going to combine them and that'll be super interesting I think because you'll see like it's basically like this is going to be my inescapable stress one where if I settle this one is like okay as if it's functioning normally, but this one is what's happening when the acetylcholine is up when it should be encoding. And then you can see that like okay it encoded it really well but the memory is really bad, or it could remember it but it what stuff like that that I think will be very fascinating to know. So yeah, that's pretty much experiment two kind of ready to go. And I knew I was like, I feel like something's gonna go wrong at the lower levels. That's why I was like, I need to make sure the noisy pattern is fixed because I was like, I feel like something is gonna go off there if it's learning so many extra ones and then it's like, so very interesting. I'm curious to know like I need to meet with my supervisor soon. Like I need to make another meeting with him and I'm curious to know what he's gonna say about all this. I might, once I get all this fixed up and I make one that's like the whole thing, before I make my graphs, actually, I might meet him again and show him what I have done, and then go into doing like the more numerical parts of my results section. Yeah.